Hey, welcome to Serra. My name is Mike Downey. I'm the immediate past president of the U.S. Serra Council and a member of the St. Serra Club of Des Moines, Iowa. This session is intended particularly for members who are relatively new to Serra to bring them up to speed on what Serra is all about and how it works. You should have some printed materials that include the slides I'll be using and some documents I'll be referring to. Hopefully, you're also viewing this session with at least one officer from your club who can point out specifics on how your club operates compared to what's presented here. Here's an overview. Three areas will be covered. First, the big picture of Serra, sort of the above the club level view. We'll talk about Serra International, its structure, organization, and leadership. We'll talk briefly about the Serra Foundation. Then we'll drop down a level to the U.S. Council for Serra. Finally, we'll review the state of vocations in the U.S. After the big picture, we'll review how clubs work. Finally, we'll discuss vocations activities that clubs can engage in. Let's start with Serra's mission statement. It's simple and elegant. To foster and affirm vocations to the ordained priesthood and vowed religious life, and through this ministry, grow in our own Catholic faith. This simple paragraph actually sets forth three distinct missions. First, to foster new religious vocations. Second, to affirm and support existing religious vocations. And third, by doing so, to grow in our own holiness. These are the touchstones of all we do in Serra, and it's important that our work support all three missions. The easiest and most fun is the second mission, to affirm and support existing religious vocations. One of the privileges of being a Serran is that we have a chance to get to know the bishop, priests, sisters, and seminarians on a personal level that most Catholics will not experience. We do this through appreciation events, and these people are incredibly grateful for all of our support. The feedback is positive and immediate. Contrast that with the first mission, which is to foster new vocations. The masses we attend, the rosaries we pray, the hours spent in Eucharistic adoration, we may not see the fruits of these prayers for a year, a decade, or even ever. So what has to sustain us is faith that our prayers are working. But we know they're working because Jesus told us, pray to the Lord of the harvest to send more laborers to gather his harvest. We may not know how or when or even where, but by faith, we know our prayers will result in an increase in new vocations. Let that faith sustain you even when the positive feedback is not there. Let's talk about the history and role of Serra. Serra was started in 1935 by 4 lay Catholics in Seattle, Washington. In 1951, a very significant event occurred. Serra, as a lay apostolate, was officially aggregated to the worldwide Catholic Church. It is the only lay apostolate officially recognized as part of the worldwide Church by the Vatican. That means we are part of and under the direction of the Vatican. At all times, a cardinal is assigned to Serra for oversight and direction. That being said, it's important to know that Serra does not have an exclusivity on vocations work. In fact, our role is to be leaders on vocations efforts, and we do that 3 ways. By our own efforts within our clubs, by encouraging and supporting vocations efforts by other Catholic lay organizations, such as parish vocations committees and the Knights of Columbus, who do terrific work for vocations. These folks are not competitors. They are our teammates, and we want to do everything possible to make their work successful. Finally, we lead by engaging all Catholics, even those who may never be Serrans, to pray for vocations. I want to say a little about the person for whom our organization is named. St. Junipero Serra was a Franciscan priest who lived in the 1700s. He's famous for his saying, always forward, never back, which has become the slogan of Serra. Here's a brief outline of his life. He was born in 1713 in Majorca, Spain, a small island off the Spanish coast. At age 16, he joined the Franciscan order. Then, at age 36, he volunteered to go to the New World as a missionary, working initially in the missions in Mexico. At age 56, he began establishing the missions in California, the work for which he is most famous. He died at age 70 in California. It's said that he traveled over 24,000 miles in his work as a missionary, mostly on foot or on the back of a mule. Father Serra was canonized in September 2015. His feast day is celebrated on July 1st every year. That's a thumbnail sketch of his life, but there are 5 things I want you to know about St. Serra because you are a Serran. First, he chose a life of humble service at great cost to himself. It's easy to miss the fact that for the first half of his life, Father Serra was not a missionary at all. In fact, by age 35, he had become a renowned professor of philosophy and theology at the University of Lillian in Spain. I'm guessing this was a pretty cushy job, especially at that time. He really had it made. And yet, at age 35, he hears God's call to be a missionary to the New World and gives all this up. He goes from the easy life to a life full of hardship, danger, and uncertainty. Such was his commitment to do God's will. Second, he suffered constant physical pain during most of his life as a missionary, but he never let it stop him. After first landing on the east coast of Mexico, he set off on foot to Mexico City, 250 miles away. Along the way, he was bitten by either an insect or a serpent. His leg became terribly infected. It was swollen and covered with ulcers on the lower portion. This wound never healed. Twice it brought him close to death during his missionary work. It puts the 24,000 miles that he covered mostly on foot in a remarkable light. Yet he never let it become an excuse for not doing God's will. Saint Serra believed in the power of persistent prayer. At age 56, he set off on the journey to establish the missions in California. But the expedition ran into serious problems when it failed to rendezvous with the supply ship. By the time they reached the first mission site at present-day San Diego, they were almost out of food and supplies, and the soldiers were suffering from disease and pestilence. The Spanish commander made a decision to abandon the journey and turn back immediately. But Father Serra got the commander to agree to wait 9 days until the Feast of St. Joseph for the supply ship to arrive. The Franciscans began a novena of continuous prayer to St. Joseph. On the 9th day, the Feast of St. Joseph, at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the sails of the supply ship were spotted, and the journey that led to the establishment of all the missions in California was allowed to continue. All because of St. Serra's belief in the power of persistent prayer. St. Serra was an incredible advocate for the indigenous people. My guess is that Father Serra was not well liked by the Spanish authorities, the Spanish military, or the Spanish colonists. He constantly intervened between them and the native people to prevent their exploitation, and he usually won. Finally, I want you to know the significance of the bell in Serra. You can see bells prominently displayed in our logo. Father Serra used an ingenious method to call the native peoples to learn about Christ. You have to realize that the sites for the California missions were created from scratch, and usually there were no native people there. One of the first things Father Serra would do is have one of the monks hang a bell in a tree and begin ringing it continuously. The bell could be heard for miles and miles. And soon the natives would come, out of curiosity, to see what was causing the strange sound. When they did, the Franciscans would befriend them, give them food, treat any illnesses they could. Then they would send them back to their families, friends, and villages to invite all to come back to the mission. It was an incredibly simple but effective way to call people to learn about Jesus Christ. Always know this about St. Serra. We have an incredibly effective advocate in heaven for our vocations work. Let's talk about Serra International. There are about 13,000 Serrans worldwide, operating through about 400 clubs in 46 countries. Serra is organized primarily into 10 geographic councils, of which the U.S. Council is one. Serra's current Episcopal advisor is Cardinal Tom Collins from Toronto, Canada. Serra International has a board consisting of representatives from each council and officers of the organization. The current president of Serra International is Moira McQueen from Canada, and the president-elect is Emmanuel Costa from Italy. Serra International also has an executive director who reports to the board. That person is a young man named John Liston, himself a former seminarian. John is also executive director for the Serra Foundation and the U.S. Council of Serra. So he really wears 3 hats and reports to 3 boards. He has a staff of 3 full-timers in the Chicago office and 2 part-timers. John and his staff are the only persons who draw a salary for Serra work. All the rest are volunteers. In terms of the value that Serra International brings to clubs, it's important to note that our mission is to serve the worldwide Catholic Church. not just a church in the U.S. So Serra International brings the Serra model to areas of the world where no such vocation effort exists, adapting it as needed to the local culture. Serra also brings all Serrans together once a year at an international convention. It's a wonderful way to share experiences, inspire each other, and increase our spirituality. Serra International also ensures that Serra activities are coordinated with the worldwide priorities of the Vatican, again, reflecting our standing as an official lay apostolate of the worldwide Catholic Church. Let's look briefly at the Serra Foundation. The foundation is the grant-giving arm of Serra, and while an independent entity is managed through Serra International, its mission closely parallels that of Serra itself. It exists to fund programs that foster new vocations, to fund formation programs for existing vocations, and to enhance recognition of Serra worldwide. Here's an overview of what the foundation has accomplished. Over $3 million has been given in grants since 2005. As of year-end 2023, the foundation had $2.8 million in assets invested, all according to US CCB standards. And in 2023, the foundation received about $523,000 in donations and income to fund its grant giving. 2023 was an unusual year, however. Over $165,000 was raised and donated to support U.S. Serra's sponsorship of the National Eucharistic Congress. In 2023, the foundation also received several large bequests from wills. Typically, the foundation receives between $150,000 to $200,000 in donations. Over the last 4 years, annual grants have ranged in amount from about $70,000 to $100,000 per year. You can get a flavor of the types of programs and institutions receiving grants from the table on page 4A in the supporting documents. The foundation does a lot of good work for vocations. Each year in November, you will receive a letter or an email requesting a donation to the foundation. I encourage you to consider some donation, no matter how small. This is an easy and convenient way to help fulfill our mission for vocations in the worldwide Catholic Church. Let's drop down one level from Serra International to the U.S. Council for Serra. I mentioned there are about 13,000 Serrans worldwide. About 60% of these, or about 8,000 Serrans, are in the U.S., which is no surprise since Serra started in this country. There are about 200 clubs in the U.S. Serra's U.S. Episcopal advisor is Bishop Tom Daly from Spokane, Washington. Serra U.S. is organized into 9 geographic regions depicted on this map in various colors. Each region has a regional director. Each region, in turn, is organized into districts, or groups of clubs, usually in close geographic proximity. There are a total of 44 districts in the U.S. Each district has a district governor. The district governor is the primary interface between individual clubs on the one hand and Serra International and the U.S. Council on the other. The district governor's job is to advise, encourage, and inform clubs they serve about best practices and Serra priorities. Like Serra International, the U.S. Council has a board made up of the 9 region directors and council officers, including the president, treasurer, secretary, and the vice presidents of 5 standing committees. These standing committees, vocations, programs, membership, communications, and cultural outreach, help inform and inspire club officers through training and preparation of materials that clubs can use. The value the U.S. Council brings to Serra clubs falls into 4 categories. First, it is the repository of the wisdom of Serra. At present, this is shared primarily by the training for club officers held at monthly conference calls in the areas of vocations, programs, communications, membership, and cultural outreach. It is also a source of new ideas and problem solving for clubs. The U.S. Council holds what is called the Serra Rally each year in January to train and inspire our club presidents, district governors, regional directors, and any other interested Serrans. The rally is filled with new ideas for clubs and great discussion concerning issues that all clubs face at any one time. Also, the U.S. Council, in conjunction with Serra International, publishes a great quarterly magazine called The Serran, a hard copy of which is mailed to all Serran households. Third, the U.S. Council communicates the vocations priorities of the U.S. bishops to local clubs. The U.S. bishops currently have three priorities for Serra clubs. First is to have Serra clubs support vocations awareness in parishes through the annual vocations awareness events, Priesthood Sunday, National Vocation Awareness Week, World Day for Consecrated Life, World Day of Prayer for Vocations, Sisters Week, and Brothers Day. Serra US has prepared extensive support materials and programs available on the serraus.org website to help clubs do this. The second priority of the U.S. bishops is the Newman Ministry. This program was actually started by Serra and is an effort to keep young Catholics connected to their faith when they go to college. It is important because so many young Catholics fall away from the church when they go to college. Yet studies show this is an age when many religious vocations are discerned. Serrans support the Newman Ministry by gathering and providing names of graduating high school Catholics to the Newman database, which Newman then forwards to the Catholic youth ministries on their respective campuses, so incoming students can be contacted to get involved with the Catholic Church on campus. Newman has over 5,000 colleges and universities, along with a specific Catholic youth ministry at each in its database. A third priority of the U.S. bishops is to have Serra US develop web resources, a sort of digital toolbox for diocesan vocations directors to use in their work. The result has been the serraspark.org website, with over 30 ready-to-use programs diocesan vocations directors can use in their work. It is constantly being updated and refined based on input from vocations directors. Almost a third of vocations directors are new in the U.S. each year, and there is no real training to be a vocations director. Through serraspark.org, Serra US fills a critical role in making vocations directors effective. A final value to local clubs is the professional support for all the volunteers. Included in this is the maintenance of our three websites. I'll finish up the big picture with a review of the state of vocations in the U.S. The simple fact is that the shortage of diocesan priests in the U.S. remains a very real crisis and will likely get worse. Clearly, a lot of good things have been happening. New priest ordinations and the number of graduate-level seminarians have been steady since 2000. But as the carrot table on page 5A in the support documents show, these have not been enough to offset the loss of priests due to death or retirement. So the overall number of diocesan priests continues to decline. Add to this the fact that the number of Catholics in the U.S. has grown by 50% since 1965, and you can see the continuing nature of the priesthood crisis and why our Serra work for vocations is so important. Another aspect of the diocesan priesthood shortage is the grave shortage of Hispanic priests. While over 1/3 of the U.S. Catholic population is Hispanic, only 5% of priests are Hispanic, and most of these were not born in this country. With the evolution of our church into a bicultural institution, we desperately need American-born Hispanic priests that can serve both cultures well. There are some basic facts you should know about vocations to be an effective Serran. These are mostly from a book by Father Brett Brandon called A Priest in the Family. First and most important, the Holy Spirit calls the vocation, not us. So creating a culture of vocations is critical to the call being heard, and this is what Serrans do. Priests have identified other priests as the key influencer in their decision to become a priest. So creating opportunities for young people to be around priests should be a focus of Serra clubs. The time of most serious consideration to become a priest is age 17. This is why the U.S. bishops are so keen about Serran support for the Newman ministry. Time spent in Eucharistic adoration was identified as an important factor in discerning a priesthood vocation. For that to happen, there have to be opportunities for Eucharistic adoration, which is something Serrans can support. 60% of all priests were altar servers. This is why many clubs have altar server recognition and awards programs. On average, 50% of seminarians discern out. This is not a failure, but part of the discernment process that leads to a vocation calling being correctly understood. And those young men who do discern out often become incredibly strong Catholic lay leaders in our church. 92% of priests surveyed are happy being priests. While priesthood is much more than a career, it is notable that no other career has such a high satisfaction level. Finally, it is important to realize that celibacy is not the cause of the priesthood shortage. We know this because mainline Protestant churches are experiencing the same shortage of ministers, and they allow marriage. Too many Catholics naively think this is the silver bullet for solving the priesthood shortage. The only real silver bullet is prayer, creating a culture of vocations in a diocese. That's the big picture of Serra and vocations. I'm going to take a short break here so you can pause this presentation if you wish to ask your club officers questions about what has been presented. Okay, let's look at how most clubs work. All clubs are chartered by Serra International and have a unique club number. Clubs are organized by geographic areas within dioceses, but they are organized by diocese, not by parish, and they work with and for the bishop and the vocation director. They focus on prayer, service, and fellowship. The typical year for a club is July 1st to June 30th, as is true for Serra US and Serra International as well. Here's a final important point. Vocations recruitment is not the primary function of a Serra club. While many individual Serrans do on occasion encourage young people one-on-one to consider a religious vocation, our primary function is to create a culture of vocations so that a call can be heard. Clubs are structured basically as you would expect. There is a board consisting of current and former club officers. In addition, there's a group of active officers. All clubs have a president and hopefully a president-elect. There are usually several vice presidents as well. A vice president for vocations, for programs, for membership, for communications, and a relatively new vice president for cultural outreach. In addition, almost all clubs have a secretary and a treasurer. Many clubs have member trustees on their board. Clubs are also encouraged to have a club foundation representative to promote awareness of the Serra Foundation. Not all clubs have all these officers, and in some clubs, the same person may hold more than one position. But this is the most common structure clubs use. Let's look at club meetings. Club boards usually meet quarterly. The main meetings for all club members happen usually twice per month. The first is a more formal program meeting in which there is a planned presentation, usually by a guest speaker. It is almost always focused on some facet of vocations. Usually these monthly program meetings occur on the third week of the month. A second and often less formal meeting for all club members happens after the first Friday or first Saturday Mass each month. There is an exchange of information about Serra activities and vocations, usually headed up by the president. But there's also time for chat and fellowship between club members after the Mass. In addition, all club members are invited to participate in special appreciation events throughout the year. Often these take the place of the normal monthly program. There are 6 appreciation events that clubs might sponsor and hold. An event connected with the annual ordination Mass at the cathedral, a priest appreciation event, the bishop's appreciation dinner, a sister's appreciation event, a lunch or dinner for seminarians, and an appreciation event for deacons. Not all clubs engage in all these events, but most clubs do at least some of them as a way to achieve the second prong of our mission, to affirm and support existing religious vocations. That's a look at how most clubs function. I'll take another short break here so you can pause this presentation and ask questions of your club officers regarding any information that's been presented. The third area we want to cover is vocations activities. I'm going to discuss these activities in 2 groups. First, the vocations activities strictly within the club that are pretty much just for club members. Second, activities outside the club that Serra clubs lead and organize to engage all Catholics in creating a culture of vocations as part of our leadership role. In terms of activities within the club, the 2 most prevalent are Eucharistic adorations to pray for vocations and weekly or monthly rosaries. Adorations can be 1 hour liturgies or prayers stretched over a period of 6 to 24 hours, with each hour covered by at least one Serra Club member. Often these are organized in parishes covered by the club and happen during adorations already scheduled in those parishes. Weekly or monthly rosaries are often referred to as a 31 club. Usually a club member can sign up for a day of the week or a date each month to pray for vocations on an ongoing basis. Another program growing in popularity is Adopt a Seminarian. Club members sign up to spiritually adopt a seminarian and send letters of encouragement, pray specifically for their seminarian by name, send birthday, Christmas, and Easter cards. Some even invite seminarians to a family dinner when the Sems are home. You don't have to know these seminarians personally when you start. All seminarians are grateful to know that they are being specially mentioned in someone's prayers. And there are many great stories of Serrans who have formed a special personal bond with a seminarian that has continued long after the seminarian becomes a priest. Some clubs get together as a club to put together care packages for all the seminarians in their diocese. These are often sent out in the fall or early spring. They can include simple items like postage stamps, microwave popcorn, gift cards, movie passes, phone cards, books, prayer cards, anything seminarians might use during their time in seminary. They are much appreciated, as you can guess, and they let seminarians know that they're in your club's thoughts and prayers. Some clubs have annual altar server recognition and awards events, usually with pizza and pop. Again, we know that 60% of priests were altar servers, so we know this is a rich environment for future vocations. Serra International holds a monthly conference call for an international rosary for vocations. At present, this is held on the last Saturday of each month at 8 a.m. Central Time. You should begin receiving a monthly email about how to participate. Finally, many clubs are actively involved in gathering information about graduating high school seniors to forward to the Newman Ministry, so these students can be contacted by the Catholic youth ministries on their campuses that they are attending. I've talked a lot about the Newman Ministry and how important the bishops think this is. I encourage you to review the information on this slide on your own. But mostly, I want you to encourage you and your clubs to engage in this activity, because if Serrans don't do it, it won't get done. There are 3 other special programs that many but not all clubs engage in. The first is to organize visits by a few Serrans in the club to seminaries on a weekend. Almost all seminaries are open to this. Often you can stay right in the dorm with the seminarians and shadow them during the weekend. From personal experience, I think you will come away uplifted about the good hands that the future of our church is in. Many clubs hold an annual retreat focused not as much on vocations as on the holiness of club members. Often the club chaplain or the vocation director leads this, and it's often held during Advent or Lent. This is in fulfillment of our 3rd mission, to increase our holiness. A final special event is an annual Mass to pray for deceased Serrans by name. That's been a review of vocations activities within the club that pretty much just club members engage in. Let's turn to vocations activities to engage non-club members in creating a culture of vocations. These activities are generally organized, promoted, and led by the club, and in some cases they parallel programs we've already discussed. Rosary programs in parishes, getting parishioners to sign up for a weekly or a monthly rosary for vocations, the 31 Club. Just like what we do within the club, but for non-club Catholics in our parishes. Special adorations for vocations. When we decide to do a club adoration for vocations, we can extend its impact by inviting parishioners who are not members to join us through bulletin announcements in advance of the scheduled adoration. A program growing in popularity is the Call by Name program. The club works with a parish priest to invite parishioners at Mass one weekend to fill in, anonymously if they wish, a card with the name or names of young people from the parish they think the diocesan vocations director might want to speak with about a possible religious vocation. The card is placed in a box in the back of church. Sarans supply a blank card to the parish and follow up by collecting those filled in and forwarding to the vocation director. It's an easy way for all Catholics to become involved in vocations work, even if they feel uncomfortable themselves approaching young people about a vocation. Great results have been achieved where this program has been used. Starting and supporting parish vocations ministries is another great way to engage all Catholics in vocations work. This should include sharing all vocations program materials Serra has compiled for the parish vocation ministry's use, including especially the programs on the serraspark.org website. Many clubs put together display boards with pictures and brief biographical information about the current seminarians in the diocese. These are distributed or rotated to the parishes for display in the back of the church, along with individual cards for each seminarian, sort of like baseball cards, that can be taken home to be placed on a refrigerator to remind folks to pray for specific seminarians. Then there are the 4 national awareness events that the U.S. bishops have asked us to support in parishes. They are Priesthood Sunday, the last Sunday of September, National Vocations Awareness Week, the first full week in November, World Day for Consecrated Life, which is the first weekend in February on or after February 3rd, which is Candlemas Day, World Day of Prayer for Vocations, which is always on Good Shepherd Sunday in the spring. There are 2 other relatively new events that can also be supported: National Sisters Week in the spring and Religious Brothers Day on May 1st. All of these are supported in parishes by Serra clubs using the many programs that are available on the serraus.org website. Finally, many clubs sponsor and organize a traveling crucifix, traveling chalice, or traveling St. Serra statue among families or school classrooms for a week at a time. These sacramentals are accompanied by a 7-day prayer program with a focus on vocations. So there's lots we can do to engage Catholics who are not Serrans in praying for vocations. We're just about done. I want to strongly encourage you as a new Serran to actively engage immediately in your club's vocation work. Here's how. Start with the basics. Attend the regular monthly program meetings, the first Friday or first Saturday Mass and follow-up meetings, and all appreciation events. But go beyond that. Sign up to pray a rosary once a week or a month for vocations. Dedicate 1 hour a month to Eucharistic adoration for vocations. Find out where these are scheduled to be held and help by covering an hour. Adopt a seminarian. Again, you don't have to know the seminarian personally. That will happen as you find ways to encourage them in their vocations through letters, cards, or phone calls. There is no more intimate way to encourage a vocation at such a critical time in the discernment process. Help with Newman Ministry information gathering, usually in the summer. Sign up to assist with an appreciation event. These take a lot of work, but they are effective and vital to affirming existing religious vocations. Join a 7 Serrans prayer team to pray for a vocation director for 1 hour each week. And last but not least, help recruit new members to Serra, especially friends you know who have a special place in their hearts for vocations. We need more prayers for vocations. We need more hands for service. And we need more Serrans to demonstrate there is strong support from lay Catholics for priests and religious. Again, welcome to Serra. I hope you have a much better understanding of what Serra is all about and how Serra works. Our work is incredibly important to the future of the Catholic Church. So engage in Serra immediately. Take time to talk to your club officers about how to do this and ask any questions you may have. Thank you for your time, and may God bless you and your work for Serra and for religious vocations.